Well, hello and welcome to episode number 339 of the Plane Talking UK podcast. I'm Carlos, and in this week's show we say a fond farewell to BA's last two remaining 747s, but there may be good news. The A220 turns into the next new bizjet, and a woman is caught trying to take rather a lot of money into Dubai. And in the military news this week, Russia's new fighter jet goes topless. Canada receives their first CC-295 Kingfisher search and rescue aircraft, and we have some exciting news about the Red Arrows. So joining me this week in the PTUK's Master Suite Studios, it is of course the man who, well, let's just say, pushes all the right buttons. It's Matt Smith.
And I think the classic Morecambe and Wise joke is not necessarily in the right order. But anyway, there we go. Yes, hello. The PTUK Master Suite Studio. That's a mouthful and a half.
Well, it's come a long way in the last few months, mate. You know, you've got the exit sign above the door.
That is true. Yeah, I have. Yeah,
you know,
I got. Yes, was it? What did we say it was? It's off 747-400, wasn't it?
It is. Yeah, Matt. Yeah, you've got the 747-400 exit sign.
I'll have to take a picture and show everyone, won't I, at some point? But
and it's a BA one as well. Which
it is a BA one. Yes, absolutely. Very
quite
kindly
exciting.
sent to us by the Plane Reclaimers, Andrew, wasn't it?
Yes, very kind of him indeed. But no, all good, Matt. How are things with you? Good.
Yes, not bad. I'll be honest with you. I'm absolutely sick to the back teeth of
Rain?
doing everything in the rain.
Oh. Yes, yeah.
Absolutely
Know what
fed
you're
up of it. Absolutely fed up. Every single school run I've done in the last sort of couple of weeks is just, it's either rained in the morning or rained in the afternoon.
Yeah, but for me and you, Matt, you know as well as I do that, you know, like today when I got back, I spent nearly an hour cleaning my truck.
This is it. Yeah, absolutely.
And I know that next week, as soon as I drive
wasted
back
time,
to roads,
absolutely.
wasted
Why did you
time.
bother? Yeah,
Wasted
absolutely. Anyway, yes.
So joining us, he's back this week. He is back from his whirlwind tour of Europe, and we're so glad he's back.
Switzerland and Dublin, right? Okay, yeah. Right.
So welcome back onto the show. Oh, we're glad to have you back, Nev. We have missed you. It's Neville Bounds.
Yes, hello, I am back. Yeah, and it was Belfast in Sweden. But
Belfast.
It's close enough.
Right, my apologies.
Tell you what, though, the weather in Sweden last week was very nice indeed. It was about 16 degrees and very sunny. Very nice it was too. And the nice thing about there, of course, is that there's no mask wearing going on at all.
Really?
Apart from at the airport and on the aircraft. So that was a nice change, I must say. A bit of a shock coming back here on Monday morning to put everything back on again, like you do, you know, when you go into shops. But
How are the flights? How are the flights, Nev?
very good. Yeah, actually very full, I'm pleased to say. Full A320 going out and coming back. That was very good news. So, very good with the BA folks, I'm pleased to say. So, yeah, very happy.
Good. Seat 1A's looked after you then.
It did on the way back. I had to slum it in seat 1C on the way out, unfortunately.
No.
But,
No crisis.
Ouch.
Ouch. I could see the
Ouch.
flight deck. So that was something.
Oh, it's good to have you back, Nev. It's lovely to see you back. So yeah, we're actually you may have noticed that we are missing Armando this week. Unfortunately, Armando is very busy, obviously because he has had a lot going on in his world over the last few weeks, hasn't he, guys? With
yes,
pastures
absolutely.
new.
Indeed,
so,
yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So the worst thing is we're not allowed to say anything about it at all because of what he does. But anyway, there we are. Yes, a new job for Armando. Anyway, very exciting.
But he has sent us a video segment in for the military segments.
Yes, you'll be hearing from him in the military as normal. Yep.
But we have got a super guest host joining us on the show tonight. You've probably heard his voice there in the intro, and it gives me great pleasure to welcome back the man who puts the first class into layovers. Is of course Paul Papadimitriou. How are you, Paul?
I was terrified where he was going with that for a minute, I'll be honest.
No organism.
No,
yeah, that's very good. Hi guys. Hi guys. No first class. No travel for me. Nev is traveling for all of us, and I'm vicariously living that through him. Actually. How everybody on the chat? How everybody on the podcast and on YouTube?
So, Paul, obviously, as you quite rightly just said, the whole flying thing has just gone so quiet for you. But are there any glimmers of light in the future?
I mean, for me or for the industry. Look, the reality is my market is usually Asia. Asia is closed. Asia is closed at least until spring 2021, so there won't be any travel there. So maybe a few travels in here and there, but for the moment, I'm not truly missing it, to be frankly honest with you. So I'm very fine, actually, to be honest.
So you've not
I know
taken...
an Av-geek should say that, but I'm fine not traveling for a little while. Yeah.
I was going to say, Paul, you've not fancied taking one of those flights to nowhere that's been advertised?
No. Do they do that in the UK? I don't think so. It's
No.
Singapore
Australia,
is doing
I think,
it.
isn't it? Yeah.
Australia is doing it. Taiwan, I think, is doing it. But I think Taiwan, you stay on the ground. You just get in, you get food, and you leave the aircraft. You never leave the ground, I think. Something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't realise, airplane food had improved that much, I'll be honest.
actually, Singapore Airline, I don't know why, but Singapore Airline keeps sending me on the newsletter stuff that is really for Singapore, and they say, "Oh, you can dine with us in our 380 on the ground." I'm like,
Lovely.
"Yeah, but first, how do I get to Singapore?"
Small detail.
But we are actually, on that note, what really annoys me is the amount of emails I've got just in the last few weeks from various like car hire companies, BA for one as well, EasyJet, Ryanair, book now, cheap flights, book now, cheap holidays, book this, book that, book this. Where am I going to go? Where am I going to go?
Yeah, I know. We just got to play the waiting game, haven't we?
Yes, we have. But...
Yeah.
We have got to say a big welcome to everyone in the YouTube chat room who's joined us this evening. We've got loads of family members in there, some extra ones as well in this week. This is good to see. We've got Captain Cruz. Hello to you, Captain Cruz. Stephen Ivey, Andreas Norton. Hello to you, Andreas. Good to see you in this week. Our main man, Micah, is in the chat room as well. Richard Adams, Tony S., just scrolling down, just make sure I didn't miss Dave Abbey. Hello to you, Dave Abbey.
Oh, I haven't seen Dave for a long time. God, do you know what? Actually, weirdly, I was looking at photos this week because it was November time that I went out to New York, and obviously I had the great pleasure of meeting up with myself and Owen were out there, and we got the opportunity to meet up with Dave Abbey, and he gave us a wonderful tour of New York. And if you are in New York and you can get your hands on David, then highly recommended, because it was a fantastic walking tour he took us on. Anyway, sorry, I digress.
I want to do that.
Highly recommended.
Bucket list.
Yeah, absolutely.
Who else we've got? We've got Sturman. Hello to you, Sturman, as well. Hello, Gareth. Alan Loveday, Benjamin Todd.
I haven't seen Ben for a long time.
Yeah, Ben Todd's in there as well.
He's in Australia, isn't he? Isn't it stupid o'clock where he is currently?
Probably must be stupid. Yeah. Don't forget as well, if you are listening to the audio version of the show, don't forget to whip over to YouTube, type us in, Plain Talking UK, and hit that subscribe button and the bell icon, which is right next to it, to be notified when we are live and recording, like we are now. And then you can join all this lot in the chat room and have a good old-fashioned knees up in the chat room.
Absolutely. So, can't beat talking about, as I say, like-minded aviation geeks. You can all talk about, usually food. I think that's normally what happens, isn't it? But,
So there's lots of news this week to get through, so we better get on some commercial aviation news. So we are going to start the show then, as we do each week, with a rundown of the weekly news from across the world and the UK. So if everyone's ready, let's go.
Well, yes, on writers.com, here's quite a big story that was on the television and on the radio yesterday. It says BA's Queen of the Skies jumbos bid farewell to rainy London. And it was very rainy yesterday, actually. British Airways' last jumbo jets bade farewell to London on Thursday, but cloud and driving rain prevented a rare synchronised dual takeoff for the Queen of the Skies, which brought long-haul flights to the masses. Once the world's largest operator of the 747, BA has now retired its entire jumbo jet fleet after COVID-19 curtailed most air travel, accelerating the move to more fuel-efficient planes. Chief Executive Alex Cruz said that it was a difficult day for everybody at British Airways as the aircraft leaves our home at Heathrow for the very last time. The airline had planned a rarely seen synchronised dual takeoff on parallel Heathrow runways, but the weather prevented that, and the final flights were witnessed by BA staff and engineers who lined up to see them off. For over 50 years, the 747 has been the world's most easily recognised jetliner, with its humped fuselage, 4 engines and 16 main wheels. It took its maiden flight in 1969 and soon secured its place in history as the jet which allowed more affordable air travel due to its size and range. Passengers have included John Paul II, who arrived for his first visit to Ireland by a pope on an Aer Lingus 747 in 1979. Ayatollah Khomeini returned to Iran from exile on an Air France jumbo during the Islamic Revolution that year. BA's predecessor BOAC introduced the 747 on the London-New York route in 1971, and at its peak, BA had 57 747-400 aircraft. Former pilots have told how the jet took some getting used to from a cockpit positioned almost 30 feet above the ground and more when angling the nose higher just before touching the runway. It was like landing a block of flats from the second floor, Hugh Dibley, a former BOAC captain, told Reuters. The owner of British Airways is battling to survive after the pandemic wiped out much of the global flying market, which is why they've had to retire these slightly early. They were going to retire them, I think, in 2024, but they've brought that forward, mainly because of the fuel-efficient 787s and 350s, but also they need to save money on maintenance costs, I would imagine, as well. So, but it was a shame that the weather was so bad yesterday, so they couldn't do that dual takeoff on both runways. It was a great shame.
Did you say it was a 747 that retired?
I did, yes.
Oh, I thought it was a 737.
Yeah. Well, of course, the media once again couldn't quite get it right today, could they? And I did see on Sky News, on the Sky News website, that they were saying that the BA had retired the 737.
They did. Although, as I say, I've actually got the weirdly, do you know the really sad thing is? I've literally just loaded this page and it still hasn't been corrected.
Yeah, you
Oh,
would have
that's
thought by
bad.
now someone might have just gone.
Yeah, absolutely. And yet, weirdly, if you scroll down to what you see where the little video and the picture is,
Yes.
there it does clearly state that it was a 747 jumbo jet. So, as I say, it probably, ironically, just a very humble accidental key press. Because let's be honest, the 3s and 4s, I think, as you said in our group chat earlier, Nev, the 3s and 4s aren't very much next to each other. So I suppose you could
with
sort of
fat fingers. You could have.
Well, absolutely, yes, but welcome to my world. Hey, it's one of those. Actually, worth mentioning as well. I hope you guys don't mind me saying, but obviously where they flew to. If I just correct me if I'm wrong, that they went to Kemble, didn't they? These 2 aircraft, is that correct?
One went to Kemble, and one went to Athen in South Wales.
Indeed, and the very nice thing here is we had one of our correspondents on the ground in Kemble to receive said aircraft. Jonathan Warner was actually in Kemble and very kindly sent me this afternoon some pictures that he took of said aircraft being sort of basically arriving there. I mean, as always, look at those absolutely stunning photographs, as always. Yeah. Thank you very much, Jonathan Warner. If you're listening to the audio version of the show, I'll tell you what I'll do is I'll make sure I embed the pictures into the show notes because they really are quite special. But
did you get the chance, Paul, to fly on the BA Queen of the Skies when you were?
Oh my God! You know what? Actually, only once. It was Dubai to London, actually to Heathrow, probably 2017. The 64K was it? The best seats in the sky. So that was really cool. Yeah. I like it. I flew the 747 like thousands of times with other airlines, but for some reason for BA I was never on it. But I'm really sad. But you know what? The rain was at the end kind of appropriate, I guess, because that's the weather we know the most. So it was a very British send off.
Yes. Yes, in the pouring rain. Yes, that sounds about right, doesn't it? Yeah, it's typical British weather, isn't it? Absolutely. It marks the sad occasion very nicely, doesn't it? I guess. Yes.
And of course, the last flight that Carlos and I took was indeed on a 747.
It was
on the way back from the Dubai Air Show. little did we know.
Oh,
that was
wow,
the last
nice.
time we ever flew on that aircraft.
Didn't you do a bit of business class on one of those legs?
We
Yes.
did, yes.
So you experienced a little bit of business class on the 747 then?
We did, yes.
It's
but
really
we also
nice,
managed to get up front.
Oh, look at that! Look at that! Nev's
Oh, nice.
super efficient. Look at that! What a
Yes.
great,
Oh,
what a
nice.
great picture that is. Love it.
If you look at,
I would love you guys to fly me. I mean, I'm sure I would arrive in style.
well,
Maybe not in one piece, but in style.
Small detail. Yes, absolutely. Right, come on. We better move on to the next story because otherwise we'll be running out of time. The next story, so it's getreading.co.uk is the next website, and the headline is "Popular Plane Tracking Websites Hacked in Spate of Mystery Cyber Attacks." Now, this is a sort of slightly odd story. In fact, actually, when we were having our meeting, we were sort of saying, like, why would people want to be, why would people be attacking the sites? And we couldn't really get an answer. So it'd be interesting to see if the chat room has any idea why. But yeah, basically, Flight Radar 24 said it had suffered 3 attacks in 2 days, and Plane Finder also reported a similar incident. So plane tracking websites Flight Radar 24 and Plane Finder have been hacked in a series of cyber attacks. The incidents blocked users from accessing feeds following the sustained attacks on the websites that monitor traffic at UK airports such as Birmingham, Heathrow, Manchester, Cardiff and further afield. Flight Radar 24 said it had suffered 3 attacks in 2 days, and it initially struggled to restore the service. Plane Finder said that there may have been issues accessing Plane Finder at the moment. It seems that it's our turn to have our systems attacked. Our team are working hard to restore normal service. Please bear with us. We will provide updates as and when we have them. Both websites allow users to track the flight paths of commercial and private planes across the globe. Some military services are also included. Flight Radar 24 lists around about 2 million users and tracks 180,000 flights every single day. It includes aircraft manufacturers such as Airbus and Boeing amongst many of its customers. The site can identify an aircraft. Anyway, I'm not going to carry on reading that because we all know what Flight Radar 24 is capable of. But so my understanding, Nev, correct me if I'm wrong, it's what they call a DDoS attack, wasn't it? Where it was basically denying service by hammering their servers with ping requests, essentially, as a way of preventing people from being able to access company websites and things like that. And I'm not entirely the thing that's, I mean, there's conspiracy theories where the Russians are doing it all the time to do bits and pieces. But I'm curious as to why somebody would want to bring down something like,
makes no sense.
Yeah,
makes no sense.
I mean, I don't know unless it's. Although I think when we were having our meeting, didn't John say something about, because quite often deals can be done. Based on sort of following, certain private jets being sort of flown from one place to another. So perhaps it's a way of preventing people from sort of denying, finding out what plane is going where, so they could make some money off the back of it, I guess. I don't know. But, I mean, any clues as to why somebody would want to do something like this? No. Okay, good. Lovely. Any thoughts, Nev?
Well, no. I mean, it just strikes me that I think the problem is I mean, these hacks go on all the time in all sorts of different areas. It happens to people's work environment, email, Facebook.
Yeah, true.
I mean, I've had my email hacked and I've had my Facebook hacked and all the rest of it. And it's pretty difficult. And I think no matter how many things you put in place, there will always be the chance of getting something through. So you've got to be 2 steps ahead of the people that are trying to do this, haven't you, really?
Well, Lane Street is sort of saying perhaps that they were basically doing it, bored hackers with nothing better to do, just do it for their own amusement, is probably a very good point. Again, Graham is sort of saying, Graham Haley is saying, I can't see why you would just do DDoS attacks on them, though, which I guess kind of makes sense. But then, if you're trying to, I don't know, prevent somebody from going to a specific website, but then of course that won't work. I don't think, if you're trying to do it from the app, for example, because you presumably they're not relying on DNS lookups to sort of get app data backwards and forwards. I don't know. So it's very strange, very strange. Anyway, there we are. Not really a lot to that story, but it caught our eye because it was just such an odd, just an odd sort of thing to sort of an odd service to attack specifically. But
I was just reading what Sturman had put in the chat room.
Right. Okay.
You'll probably know what that means.
Right. Is it friendly?
Oh yes, it's friendly. Yeah.
Where are we? Oh right. Oh right. Yes. Okay. Here we go. So crypto assets have been hacked recently. The dollar is at a weak point with the elections in October, November. Election years is notorious year for hacking. Maybe just a coincidence. Good point. Good point. Yes, I keep forgetting about this sort of cyber currency that is sort of out there. But as you say, probably just bald hackers, as Lane says, isn't it? With nothing better to do, thinking the aviation industry isn't suffering enough already. Let's do some more damage.
Before we get hacked, we better move on.
Indeed, yes.
With the next story, which is on Flight Global, the favourite site of Mr. Bounds.
He does love the font, don't you, Nev?
And the headline, for those of you who watch the show, we've talked about the A220 quite a bit on this show. It's one of our favourite narrow-bodied single-aisle aircraft. But the A220-100 is to evolve as the 220 corporate jet. So Airbus corporate jet division has formally unveiled an executive version of its A220-100 twin jet, which will be able to operate across a range of up to 5,650 nautical miles. The aircraft, which will be branded the ACJ220, and a deviation from prior corporate jet designations, will be able to operate sectors such as London to Los Angeles and Tokyo to Dubai. Airbus performance documentation for the standard A220-100 indicates that the variant typically has a range of 2,760 nautical miles with 120 passengers, and that range tops out at some 4,250 nautical miles with minimum payloads and maximum fuel. Its fuel capacity is 21,805 litres, which is about 17.2 tonnes. But Airbus Corporate Jets President Benoit Devroge says the ACJ220 will have 5 additional tanks, enabling it to carry another 5.6 tonnes of fuel. The jet will take advantage of planned increases in maximum takeoff weights for the A220 to 63 tonnes, which has been scheduled for the second half of 2021. Devroge adds that the aircraft will be also certified for the 180 minutes ETOPS, or extended twin operations, allowing more direct routes. Airbus says that with the ACJ220, it will create a whole new market segment, which it has termed the extra-large bizjet, positioning it as an alternative to traditional large cabin executive aircraft. This offer includes the first-time flexible cabin catalogue addressing the requirements of heavy and long-range business jet categories, it adds. And executive jets claiming a similar range include the Gulfstream G500 and the Dassault Falcon 6X. Airbus has selected VIP aircraft specialist Comlux, which has a completion centre in Indianapolis, as its exclusive outfitter for the first 15 cabins of the 220 program. It looks nice, guys, I will say. The pictures are on the website.
Great interior as well.
To have a jet of this size, I mean, the A220's been a really popular jet.
Did you guys see this at Farnborough?
Yeah,
it was there, wasn't it?
Yes, Al and I went on to the on the flight deck and interviewed one of the PR folks from Airbus. But this A220's got a really useful range, hasn't it, as well? So that's easily London to New York and a bit more. Very
wouldn't it make a great bizjet, though, wouldn't it?
Yep, absolutely.
It would make a really good bizjet.
It'd make a great bizjet, wouldn't it?
I mean, just the pictures on this story, honestly, the room, I mean, it does look awesome. Travel installed.
You should have one, guys, with a PTUK kind of branding on the side.
Right, okay.
That would be so awesome, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Actually, sadly, Air Baltic is pushing back its acquisition of new 220s. So, we have a few in the skies, but they will have to wait to see more commercially, sadly.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very sad, as you say. It's not really the news we wanted. But then it's the story of 2020 in the aviation industry, full stop, isn't it? I guess.
Yes.
Sorry, is there a pandemic going on? I'd forgotten. Sorry.
You've talked it up, Matt.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
So, moving on to the next story for you, Paul, and obviously we can't do a show without talking about COVID-19.
Drinks at the ready, everyone.
Yes. So it's an article from the FT, but I actually know the guys. I mean, no, not all of them, but I know the guys behind the project. It's called the Commons Project, I think. One of the guys, the chief marketing officer, is Thomas Crampton. Used to be at the New York Times, Ogilvy, and now is the chief marketing officer for those guys. And they are like a governance type of thing. And they work along with the WEF, the World Economic Forum, which is not happening actually in Davos next year out of the same thing, COVID. And this news was, I think it was from yesterday or this morning, I can't recall, when they're trying something that many others are trying. I'll give you a little bit of insight afterwards, which is to create a digital pass to allow you to basically travel internationally, because we know that's the sector that has been the hit the most, and to grant you access to countries by proving that you've had actually a vaccine. I know that is not pleasing everyone, but to the sources, this I'm not reading the FT, but to the airlines and the other groups and working governments around the globe, especially in Asia, actually, once there is a vaccine, you will have to probably prove that you had the vaccine to enter the country. And this would be a way to do that. It would be something on your phone, I guess, an app or at least a protocol to prove that you've had this vaccine and to kind of let you in, probably to book to enter the aircraft and to enter the country. It's called Common Pass. These guys will not actually do any testing or anything. They really provide a protocol that's written in the Financial Times article. It's a standard for this kind of certification to have but I believe it will also be allowing to have the test result certification for in the meantime before a vaccine arrives. And what can I say that is interesting? Yeah, the United and Cathay Pacific are set to begin testing this digital health pass on routes linking travel hubs, including London, New York, Hong Kong, Singapore on Thursday. There's not a lot of flights between those guys. I've actually I have friends that flew in these routes there and send me pictures. They're totally empty, but I think it's a good way actually to test, because when you don't have a lot of people, you can test easily. But it is true that it is key to restart, especially long haul travel, because again, what I said earlier at the top of the show, what I'm hearing is that most of Asian countries will not open at least before spring 2021. Australia is due to open not before December 2021. So having this type of thing, especially for business travels that are for tourists, but will actually, of course, make it much easier, make it more seamless to being able to enter these countries. So it's one of these articles that you mentioned them. There are other initiatives like them as well to try basically to have an international standard to show that you have actually had the test and or have the vaccine. As you know, maybe some of you guys have done it. If you travel simply in Europe, for instance, Italy this morning just decided that to enter Italy from the UK, you need a COVID test 72 hours before boarding. Well, now it's a bit of like an ad hoc system. It would be much easier to have a single system with an international standard that all authorities agree. So that's DID. And of course, all the airlines kind of want that. Not that they are pro-vaccine, whatever. This is not a debate. They want to have a seamless way to allow people to book and to fly
travel,
again. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no,
there you go. I paraphrased the article, and I'm sorry it's behind a paywall for those who want to access it, but it's interesting. But Common Pass is the name. If you Google Common Pass, you'll find some information about that.
So great. We've touched on this in previous episodes, isn't it? I mean, do we feel this is the solution perhaps in these strange times? I guess this is all about trying to give people confidence to fly. Perhaps is it more to do with that?
I will say, I will add something. You're right about that. I will add something is that with COVID, what this crisis has clearly surfaced is that currently countries are prioritizing their own citizens and residents over travelers.
Yes.
So they will open a few bubbles here and there, especially in Asia. Now Europe is a bubble, by the way, the only one in the world, actually. But in order to actually make that happen quicker, having a standard will actually help. It's not really the airline, obviously. It's the countries that say, we don't want to import any more cases that we have. China, you go through 14 hours of clearance, and countries like Taiwan, you still go through like a full 2-week quarantine, same in South Korea, et cetera, et cetera. So to kind of not have this quarantine, if you could prove that you're okay with a system that is standardized and certified, which actually would entice people for traveling, and especially business travelers. Again, it's nothing against tourism, but business travelers are the fuel and the blood of the airline's revenue, and they're not flying currently.
No, indeed. I mean, Nev, this is something presumably you're sort of very keen to sort of see something come through for this.
Yes. I mean, for example, from Sweden to the UK and back at the moment, that corridor was opened up a few weeks ago, so I took the opportunity to do some business over in Sweden whilst I could, just in case they shut it down again. But I had to fill in a return to the UK form 48 hours before I came back to say that where I'd been and where I was going to be when I came back here. But I was just thinking about that, the COVID test thing. It's a bit like an MOT, isn't it? It's only valid on the day of the test.
True.
And I'm not trying to introduce, difficulty and political stuff here, but I'm sure that that they've got to find a universal way somehow of getting these things consistent. So, that until they do across the world, it's going to be a real problem.
I mean,
you make a great. Sorry to interrupt you, Matt. You make a great point right there, because even between countries in Europe, we should be closer in terms of regulation. It's not the EU; it's just that we're neighbors. Even that, you have one system for Greece with a QR code, a different system from Italy, a different system in the UK with a locator form that you're supposed to. So all this is very confusing. You need to learn what should I do when I do, etc. So having a standardized thing that tells you, no matter what it is it a test, is it a locator form, that you can go anywhere with it, is really a godsend for the airlines, because right now you have to deal with all this, and you had people refuse at borders, etc. Not in Europe, of course, but this is why it would make our lives much easier. We can, like Nev kind of hinted at, we can discuss long about what is the right way to do it, but at least having a standardized way that everybody can agree on, it would be much more helpful.
Well, and my thing.
I was just going to say, a bit like the same way your passport, no matter where you are in the world, is a standardised document, more or less.
And we need the airports essentially to sort of like maybe liaise. All airports need to almost liaise like with the World Health Organization or something like that, and they all need to agree that this is the standard in order to allow people to travel. So as long as you tick these boxes, you can then. But no quarantine.
Actually, this already exists in a way, because the WHO, I know it has a bad name right now, but they just an international body, had this yellow kind of passport you would have. It was a health passport, and you still have it in some countries when you need to get yellow fever vaccines, etc. You need to prove that you had these kind of vaccines. So basically, it's the same thing that we used to use a lot more back in the day that we don't do, especially in our type of countries. That will just get standardized, but it would be much easier if, instead of having something in a piece of paper that you have and you can lose or you can be forged, that you would have something much easier to use. That's about it, basically. It could even be integrated, by the way, at some point into the boarding pass, like one of the checks, right? Yeah.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. Great idea. Well, I mean, it's definitely moving in the right direction, isn't it? At least, Paul, this whole common pass thing that you mentioned. So, we'll move on to the next story, if we may. Nev, that is with you.
Yes, well, I don't know how many years we've been talking about the third runway at Heathrow.
Oh, I'm sorry, is there something going on at Heathrow?
Sorry, the answer is 20 years, if you wanted to know. In various articles, it says that in February, campaigners claimed a historic victory in the Court of Appeal, which quashed plans for a third runway at Heathrow on climate grounds. The case was brought by litigation charity Plan B and campaign group Friends of the Earth. 3 appeal judges ruled that the government approval of the expansion plan was unlawful because, among other reasons, it failed to consider the Paris Agreement on climate change. To pursue the project, the Transport Secretary would have to review how it could fit with the country's climate commitments. In a 2-day virtual sitting of the Supreme Court this week, Heathrow argued the government was not legally required to consider the Paris Agreement. At the same time, the airport owners claimed the third runway was compatible with the Paris Agreement, so a government review would ultimately conclude it could go ahead. Well, MPs voted 415 to 119 for a third runway at Heathrow in June 2018. Prime Minister Boris Johnson, the then Foreign Secretary, was in Afghanistan at the time. But Heathrow has now admitted that even in a best-case scenario, the third runway will not open until 2030, having previously been scheduled to open in 2026. First proposals with this iteration of Heathrow expansion started in late 2006. The hearing has now concluded, and a ruling from the Supreme Court is expected in January 2021. Well, my opinion is we do need it, and they should get it built. And what a
I
great
agree.
time
It's the timeline.
to do it right now, because what's going to happen is, let's fast forward, I don't know, let's say 3, 4, 5 years. We're going to be back to the levels of traffic that we were at previously, where Heathrow's capacity was at 99%. So I think just start it now. But then,
well, and also,
I'm not considering any of the climate issues with that statement, by the way.
No, indeed. Yeah, we'll gloss over. We'll pretend that's not a thing. Also, though, many could argue that given how traffic at Heathrow is obviously at its lowest point for many, many years, I mean, to start a project like this now would actually probably cause the least amount of impact on general operations at the airport. I mean, it's a shame that they can't sort of get started almost immediately, as you say.
Captain Cruise says in the chat room, actually. I was just going to say, Captain Cruise says that Heathrow started out with 7 runways.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, like in a hexagon or something. Yeah, like an hexagon, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
But even before COVID, when this and before this decision from the court right there, the most optimistic scenarios were the runway would be ready around 2026, 2027. But actually, if you were to talk to people at Heathrow, would say we are 2040, and 2045, 2050 was more likely. If you look even actually at the plans, that's more interesting. You have the plans of expansions, terminal T5X, T6, all the new terminals that would actually complement this new runway. They planned some of them for 2070. So it was already before this crisis, not a big deal. I agree with you about the ease to build it right now. However, the big problem we have right now is financing. I mean, we're about to enter like a big economical crisis. IAG and all those guys that would have to chip into building the runway will most likely actually ask for have reduction of landing fees at Heathrow. So there will be a little bit of an issue to finance this right now. And also the public, it's not about climate change that imports, but the public saying, okay, there's problems everywhere in the economy, might not see with the best eye such a project. I don't know. I'm just here making maybe a science fiction comment, but there might be a little resistance, more than we think. Sadly, I wish the third runway was built as well.
I mean, again, also though, as you make a good point there about the financing side of things, because I mean, people like IAG, for example, they're too busy trying to save their airlines at the moment, aren't they? I mean, this is the big thing. It is now. Are these companies going to have the kind of capital available to be able to sort of chip into said projects? I don't know what you think, Nev.
Well, it's the survival, isn't it, of all the airlines at the moment. We've heard all sorts of things on the radio and television in the last few weeks about how difficult it's all been for the airlines, and how long it will take for them to get back to the sort of flying schedule that they were used to. And of course,
I had to. Sorry, finish. Pardon me.
That's okay. I was just going to say that a lot of people are going, well, yeah, the Skype and the Zoom thing's working really well, and it might be for some people, but business travel, people travelling in the business and first class sections of aeroplanes are the people that will allow the larger airlines to survive. And in terms of going on holiday, we do need the EasyJets and the Ryanairs and the Wizz Airs. As well, because people are pretty fed up with it all at the moment, and they want to be able to get away next year.
No, I fully agree. There's a stat, I just wanted to mention the stat by IATA on average, and that's an average. I mean, some are worse and some are better. But on average, airlines currently have 8.5 months of capital. And as we're seeing some of the bailouts that are coming, there was never a bailout in the UK, but the US bailout might not come a second time. So there will be casualties in this, sadly. And hence, financing another runway it would be cool, however, if we still had, like we had yesterday, we were supposed to have like a double departure of 747s. Yes. It would be cool to have 3 of them departing. Wow, yes. And by the way, something that my co-host on Layovers, we haven't done an episode forever, but my co-host on Layover pointed out to me the other day, Alex Hunter, he said, he doesn't think, and he's right because I've checked, there's not going to be any 747 passenger traffic at Heathrow anymore, unless, and that's my take, unless Korean Air, hope they survive, relaunches their 748s to London. Otherwise, it's impossible to fly a 747 from Heathrow, third runway or not, sadly.
True. That's very true. Right, we better move on to the next story before we, as I say, we're sort of having to watch our timings this evening because there's a certain APG that starts as soon as we finish, basically. So the next story is with me, and I'll be interested to hear Paul's take on this when I've read this, which I suspect is why this story has been chosen. So this is on AIN Online website, and the headline is US finds Emirates for overflying Tehran. FIR, so the US Department of Transportation has fined Emirates Airlines $400,000 for flying through Iranian airspace over a period of more than 2 weeks in July 2019 in violation of an FAA order, the department said in a consent order issued on Thursday. The DOT holds jurisdiction over the matter because Emirates operates under a code-share agreement with the New York-based JetBlue Airways. The FAA issued a NOTAM in June of 2019 prohibiting flight operations in the overwater area of the Tehran Flight Information Region, FIR, because of heightened military activity and political tensions in the region. An investigation by the DOT's Office of Aviation Consumer Protection found that Emirates violated the order between the 1st of July and the 19th of July 2019 while operating under JetBlue's B6 code. In response, Emirates said it takes its regulatory compliance responsibilities extremely seriously and that it suspended for a limited time period all flights in the Tehran FIR area except direct flights to Iranian capitals immediately after the FAA issued the NOTAM. However, the airline said when it resumed services over the region, it inadvertently failed to remove the B6 code from the service. Once it recognised the oversight, it removed the code it added. Although Emirates said it does not believe the violation merited enforcement action, it agreed to a settlement that allowed it to pay half of the fine within 120 days and then waive the rest after a year if the airline does not run afoul of the order during that time. So, I mean, I suppose this is the grey... Paul's laughing. I suppose this is the grey area, isn't it? Because obviously, Emirates directly, obviously, are presumably overseen by a different agency, but because the FAA and, they were flying a JetBlue code share agreement, essentially. Code-share, obviously, they fitted into the FAA rules and regulations. I mean, I'm just intrigued to know what your thoughts are, Paul.
Look, the rules are the rules. I guess the FAA, the DOT had to follow them, and since it was a B6, so JetBlue flight as well, well, they're not supposed to fly over Iran. Is that an overreach? I don't want to get political. It's a bit, they did a settlement because at the end of the day, it's a lot of airlines get into these kind of troubles with American oversight is because is either you settle or you agree to a fine or you negotiate something or you lose access to the American market. So they cannot afford that. So a lot of what Emirates said here was PR, of course. We're sorry, whatever. Is that, I flew many times over Iran with various airlines. They didn't have a code share with the US. Is that particularly dangerous? The rest is political. Do we think that we're going to get shut down? Probably not. But look, the rules are the rules. Yeah. The Americans are making these rules in this particular case. Well,
It is what it is, essentially.
It is. Yes, thank you. Yeah, I could go for a rant about these rules and how and whatever, but it's not necessary. I think at the end of the day, it's a blip. I think it's also a signal to. It's not a signal, but it's kind of a reminder to any other potential code sharing agreements, especially with Qatar Airways, that if they were to do that, please be careful. We do not allow this to happen.
Well, of course, I mean, and again, because obviously, I mean, Emirates have direct flights, don't they, that go into, Iranian capital, as they say. Obviously, the rules are different for them, essentially, because there's no embargo as far as they're concerned for going into and out of those countries. So I suppose, you have maybe a slightly unfamiliar pilot, perhaps, with the FAA rules. So it's probably a genuine oversight, isn't it? I suppose you're right. They've got to make almost an example of Emirates, if you like.
You see the comment from Captain Cruz, Matt, in the chat room. Says, if you turn sharp right after takeoff from Dubai runway 30, you are almost in that Iranian overwatch.
Oh, are you? Oh,
exactly,
right.
Exactly. Yeah. And this is why I was mentioning Qatar Airways, because if you look at where Qatar is and the fact that they still have the blockade, they cannot go over Saudi Arabia. Basically, they have to fly over Iran. There's no choice. You're basically there, including Emirates or what's the Abu Dhabi, Etihad Airways. So, I mean, you know what? It's not the pilot. I think it's probably oversight from the airline to not have removed the B6, the code share thing, because if they had removed, nobody would have even, raised an eyebrow, because it happens every day. I fly to the Middle East or to Asia or here all the time, and we fly over Iran all the time.
Yeah, this is it. So the NOTAM that they're talking about, by the way, just for anybody who's interested, was issued as a result of a US drone being shot down by Iranian armed forces in June 2019. The location of the drone was disputed, with the US saying that it was shot down in international airspace and Iran saying it basically violated Iranian airspace. And if anyone's interested, if you want to hear more about that particular strike, you can listen to Armando and Grant McCarran talking about it on episode 274. Definitely worth a listen, just to remind yourself. But it was that was basically what it's all about. And I didn't realise that a NOTAM is basically a statement that's literally notice to airmen. I didn't know that.
Yes,
there we are. Yeah, every day's a school day, isn't it? Okay, who's next then? So Paul, you've got the next story.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. There's a flurry of stories. I'm again going to paraphrase them. They're all interesting. It's all about the vaccine delivery. And so everybody talks about the vaccine. We just did, actually. And it's interesting that the fact it might happen early 2021. We can discuss if it's a good enough vaccine, etc. That's off the topic of this show. However, when you do a vaccine, people think, let's pretend we have a vaccine in March 2021. Oh, everything is good in March 2021. No, because then you need to create it, to actually build it. You need 1 billion of doses, and then you need to distribute them. And of course, one of the ways to distribute them will be through airlines, through cargo freighters around the world, wherever the vaccine is actually created. It could be here in the UK, where I have a good shot. It could be in Asia. It could be in the US. And so these flurry of articles, the first one is from, I'm looking for those on YouTube, I'm looking at my screen, is from KoreaBizWire.com. So of course, Korean airline announced that it is securing cool cargo centers at Incheon, their main airport at next to Seoul, to deliver, to being able to safe ship this type of coronavirus vaccine, because of course they need to be in environments that are in a specific temperature and specific humidity to be delivered and still be valid when they reach wherever they need to be reached. So they do that. They're taking their experience out of delivering food and other such environmentally specific type of deliveries. There's also other airlines I have here, like United Cargo is also attempting to deliver these through containers that have that use temperature control as well. So they are buying this type of cargo because everybody knows that it's going to happen, it's going to be needed. There's a Russian airline called Airbridge Cargo that trialed to do this as well. And not only then, of course, the airlines, the airports have to be ready, because once all these things arrive, they need to clear customs as well. And they need to be safe stored whilst they do that. And also whilst all the last mile delivery, if you want, has to arrive. So airports like I'm reading here, Schiphol Schiphol Airport, and that's on simpleflying.com. Simpleflying.com is a cool website for all news air travel. Are also preparing this type of hangar with controlled temperature, humidity, to being able to store this type of vaccines. Frankfurt Airport is also doing that for a rollout, and IATA obviously is preparing the ground, because they know that will be probably one of the most, whichever country gets, most like a lab, the country who gets first delivering a vaccine. We know first the UK has bought shares, and so basically pre-bought doses out of at least a dozen different labs around the world that are attempting to create a vaccine. And other countries have done the same, less or more, etc. Once this gets started, this will be one of the biggest cargo delivery ever to happen in our history. So all the airports and the airline are basically preparing for it. It's actually really, really fascinating. The one stat I will finish with is that IATA says that the COVID-19 vaccine will require about 10 billion doses of vaccination worldwide, and obviously air transport, so air cargo will be key to make that happen.
So although we're not there yet, essentially, this is about preparing the groundwork, if you like, so that the delivery systems, if you like, to getting it to these various countries is in place. That's essentially what they're doing here.
Yeah, so imagine, for instance, that let's say the lab that creates that is based in Switzerland or Korea, in that instance that we were just discussing. And we here in the UK have to pre-bought, I don't know who we pre-bought from, but let's pretend we pre-bought from a company in Switzerland, because they have a lot of pharma there, and they need to be delivered to the UK. When they are delivered, not only you need the transport, but then you need to storage. So airports are preparing the storage, because vaccines are very, very sensitive to temperature, humidity. You don't want them to arrive and having millions of doses getting not being usable because we messed up with the temperature. So not only you have to make sure that the containers in the aircraft are made correctly, but also the containers on the ground. So it will be really fascinating, and they're right to prepare it, because we've never done a vaccine. I mean, we haven't done yet, but we've never looked for a vaccine as fast as this. And whether it happens in January, March, whether it happens even next December, whatever, we need to be prepared to being able to basically to vaccine at least, the frontline workers, the elderly, the people at risk first, because as soon as we start that, the effects of the pandemic directly diminish. So we want to be fast.
So, and that's it, I suppose, isn't it? As you say, we've never, presumably, once. Let's be optimistic. So as soon as a vaccine has been found, I don't think, the logistics involved in this, I mean, I don't think an operation of this size, Nev, has ever been done, has it, before, where you've got, en masse?
No, absolutely not. And of course, it has to be borne in mind. I was reading a statistic yesterday that Britain finished paying for World War II in 2006.
Right.
Wow.
Okay.
And you can imagine how long it's going to take us to pay off the current debt.
Right.
Okay. Around the world. So, travel, hospitality, business, everything has been absolutely devastated by this wretched disease. And so the quicker we can sort it out, the better it's going to be. Although, as we all know, it's going to be a long recovery, isn't it?
It's all right, though, because Carlos is going to win the lottery this week. So
good.
Fine. Yeah.
I am. Absolutely. It's not very often I buy a ticket, but I will go and buy one tomorrow night.
Indeed, absolutely. The last story is with you, my friend.
Yeah, we're talking about money, winning the lottery.
I can say you found this story because it really tickled you. This, didn't it?
Good segue. So, I'm a great lover of Dubai. I've been to Dubai a number of times and love the country. But there are some things that I know you should never do when you travel to Dubai. And this story comes to us from,
for example.
No, you can have lots of fun in Dubai. I love it. I love the country. This is from itv.com, and the headline: a Leeds woman, as in the city of Leeds. I think it's the city of Leeds in the UK here. City of Leeds woman found with almost £2 million in a suitcase in cash. What? So a woman from Leeds has been charged with money laundering after almost £2 million in cash was seized by border forces at Heathrow Airport. Tara Hanlon, 30, don't know why that makes any difference, but she was stopped at the airport's Terminal 2 at around 8 p.m. on Saturday the 3rd of October before attempting to board a flight to Dubai. Officers searched 5 suitcases and found cash totalling £1.9 million in sterling notes, the largest such detection of border force so far in 2020. She was arrested along with a 28-year-old woman from the Doncaster area, and the investigation was referred to the National Crime Agency. They said, apparently the Minister for Immigration Compliance and Court said this is the largest individual cash seizure at the border so far for 2020, and I'm delighted with the efforts of the Border Force officers preventing the export of undeclared cash from the UK. Is a vital step in clamping down on organised criminal gangs. The woman of Pelham Court, Leeds, was later charged with money laundering and appeared at Uxbridge Magistrate Courts on the 5th of October, where she was remanded in custody until her next appearance at Ilsworth Court on the 5th of November. And the other woman has been arrested as well, and she's also been released under investigation.
Because you know why the age is important in here. Do you know why? I think it's like because she's in her 30s. That's very naughty of her. If they said it was an 85-year-old lady who had just been done for we'd be like, leave her alone, her alone. She's got a pension to spend for.
Yeah, it's worth remembering that Dubai Customs have got previous form here because they interfered with my muff.
They did interfere with
when I tried to bring that through. That took an awful lot of explaining.
Indeed, absolutely.
So
I will, however. I will have, because it's serious, because I have a lot of friends asking me this. You have a lot of countries when you enter, you have a custom form to say, and they said if you have more than, let's say, £10,000, you need to declare them. And so, not that my friends would actually take 2 million, are rich, but most people assume that it means that you cannot bring more than 10,000. It's actually not true. You can bring, in many countries, as much as you want. The only reason they ask you is that they just want to be accountable for the money that gets in for the monetary purposes. So when they tell you to sign a paper that says if you have more than 10,000, you can say yes and have like 1 million with you, unless it seems to be in that case that money was never registered anyway, so that's also why they call her, that's laundering money. If you actually have 1 million on your bank account, take it in cash, put it in a suitcase, have a proof where it comes from. You can land in many countries and just say, yeah, I have 1 million, and that's it. And it's actually entirely possible. I remember during the Cyprus crisis, that happened, when was it? It was 2016, 2018. There was the crash of the economy. There were actually quite a few rich families caught at Larnaca airport trying to flee the country with large suitcases of euros in that same kind of amount. They were pretty much all arrested.
Wow. Okay.
I'll tell you what, I have to say, right, on that note of what Nev was saying, I've never been really worried or worried at all in airports. I love airports. I love flying. I love going to airports. It's a really good part of traveling. But honestly, that day when we flew into Dubai and Nev was escorted behind a cover, and I carried on walking, and I just looked behind and thought, oh, bugger, where's Nev?
Yeah, is this one of these, Nev? Where I need to break out the teddy bear and say, where did he touch you? Is it one of those?
I was worried that it was going to be a transparent glove.
The thing of it is, Nev was not gone for like 2 or 3 minutes. Nev was gone for at least 20 minutes.
Oh my! So it's right.
To be frank, I'd be more worried about Nev being in such a situation in the US rather than in Dubai. To be honest, I do not trust TSA at all.
Right. Okay. And on that bombshell, before any of us get sued, we'll move on to the next part of the show. And now, part 2 is now coming up, where myself and Captain Al had a chat with Dan Holley about his rather unusual hobby of storm chasing. When we left our conversation not last week, but the week before, we were discussing the extreme hail, and Al was very curious about the car rental transaction.
I'm intrigued. Your car rental transaction must be quite weird. You must go to the desk and go, I need a van to get all of my kit in. It's got to have off-road tyres in case I get stuck on a dirt track and it gets a bit boggy. And it needs to do 0 to 60 in less than 5 seconds so I can get out of Dodge.
You want an 18 van. That's essentially what you want, isn't it?
And what you don't want is a sunroof. Because if you've got big hail, that could smash that up, and then you've got all this water coming in your car. So that's one of the big things that we make sure we don't get as a sunroof.
Wow. Now, actually, you've mentioned the word hail there, and you've sent me a couple of pictures, actually, to do with that. Now, I'm just going to pop a picture up for you now. So this is the size of this is ridiculous. I mean, where was this taken?
So that was taken in just outside a town called McLean in Texas. That was in 2016, I think. And you have to bear in mind that hailstone had been on the ground for about 10 minutes. The air temperature was something like 25 degrees. So it had melted considerably from its original size when it first fell to the ground. So you can imagine it's that large already, having melted for 10 minutes. So you can imagine how big they are when they are actually coming out of this storm. And I think this one here was taken in 2017 in Nebraska from memory. So that's a pretty sizable piece of ice there. And that will cause damage, obviously, to vehicles and property sometimes as well. If you've got very strong winds coming out of these storms, the hail can actually be horizontal, and it can smash out windows facing the wind sometimes as well. So it can be pretty damaging, even if you don't have the tornado aspect.
So
hail is something in aircraft that we are very, very aware of, because if you can imagine hitting that stuff at sort of 400 miles an hour,
oh my goodness,
it's not good, really. And it can cause an awful lot of damage to an aeroplane very quickly, and it doesn't have to be that big. So we'll give the size of that hail probably a 9 out of 10 on the danger stakes for aircraft.
Now, we've got some more pictures, actually, that Dan has sent us, and I think what we'll do is we will get Al to mark these, to give it a rough aviation theme. So we'll mark these out of 10, if you wouldn't mind, Al, in regards to these pictures. So the first one I'm going to bring up here, now, I'm sure there's some proper technical terms here, but, I mean, these are quite shocking photos for me, who's never seen anything like this. Whereabouts was this picture taken?
So that was the same storm as the first hail picture. So that was McLean, Texas in 2016. And I think that was actually my second tornado. So,
wow.
it was a lot larger than the first one I'd seen. And that one was very exciting to see as well. All of them really are. They're all unique in their way. And you still get excited, even if you've seen 200 tornadoes, I would imagine.
Yeah.
But yeah, all very
So cool. Is that a Prob 30 tempo, 1,500 metres in heavy rain?
I have no idea what the attack would have been that day.
That's slightly scary either way, but it's
surprising gust.
Yeah, quite. The element of surprise is not your friend, I think, when it comes to stuff like that. I mean, just describe that picture to us for those of you who are listening to the audio version of this show. Just to sort of try and describe this picture, Dan, if you would.
Yeah, so the tornado is obviously in the center of the photo here. There's a lot of rain behind it and to the right-hand side. And within that, there would have been some pretty big hail as well. And this tornado was moving essentially from left to right. So from southwest to northeast. You can see the sort of sky to the southwest behind that tornado, where the sun was starting to set that afternoon as well. So I think this was on the ground for about 10, 15 minutes from memory. So, it was there a long time, long enough to stand there and take it all in. Whereas obviously the first tornado I saw was a 10-second job, and it was sort of blink and miss it type thing. So this one certainly lasted a lot longer.
I mean,
so for the sort of semi-lay person, sorry, Matt, are there any additional triggers that are required for a tornado other than for a thunderstorm, or is it just the intensity of the thunderstorm that creates the tornado?
Yeah, it's a bit of both. So with these storms, wind shear is very much a big component that you want. Thunderstorms in the UK, very rarely do we get the wind shear. And that is basically a change of wind speed or direction with height. So a typical setup in the US plains would be a southeasterly wind at the surface. And then gradually, as you go up through the atmosphere, that swings around more to a southwest or even a westerly at sort of 3 miles above the ground, that sort of thing. So that's a sort of a twisting motion it induces on these things. Now, if you've got a thunderstorm in the UK with no wind shear, what tends to happen is the thunderstorm develops because the updraft is going up. It then starts raining, and it rains through the updraft and basically cuts off the updraft. And so it collapses within an hour or so of having developed in the first place. Whereas these storms in America, when you've got wind shear, you can you tilt the updraft. And that means the updraft is then separated from the downdraft. And so that means it can last hours, basically. As long as it's never going to rain into the updraft, it will keep eating up, if you like, the warm, moist air that's present, and therefore track a long distance. Now, for a tornado, you need very strong wind shear in the low levels of the atmosphere. The thunderstorms themselves are rotating, albeit relatively slowly, but sometimes you can get some very strong wind shear at low levels, and that gets stretched up into the updraft to create these tornadoes. So I think the supercells, from memory, I think only about 20% of them actually produce a tornado. So if you've got 5 of these thunderstorms that are developed in a line, you've then got to pick the one that might then go on to produce a tornado. And of course, the tornado's not there all the time either. It might only be there for a minute or two and then go back up again. So it really is a case of sort of being in the right place at the right time to be able to see these.
So, I mean, forgive my naivety here when it comes to this. I mean, you hear stories of how they sort of meet the ground. I mean, do they actually touch the ground? Is that a common occurrence?
Yeah, so the basic idea is the funnel would start at the cloud base and then gradually extend down to the ground. Now, you can actually have ground contact without actually a visible funnel on the ground. So you might see perhaps the funnel halfway down, and then if you look closely at the ground, you could see dust sort of spinning
swirling
underneath it. So technically that tornado is on the ground. And the general rule of thumb is if you can see the sort of the cone of the tornado halfway down, then it's assumed that it is on the ground already. It only appears visible on the ground if the condensation has developed. If the pressure drops enough around that tornado for the condensation then to take place and it to become visible to the naked eye.
Wow. It's such a scary subject. So we've got a couple more photos that we'll work our way through, if I may. Now, are there different names or titles, if you like, to these hurricanes? And what's the difference between, for example, a hurricane and a tornado?
We get asked this question a lot, actually. Incidentally, this photo, while you've got it up, that was a couple of years ago in Colorado, I think. And that, albeit very small, weak tornado, that crossed the field right next to us. And we had parked up with about probably 10 other chase vehicles. You know, storm chasing is very popular. A lot of people go and do it. So we'd all parked up on this dirt road. And then as this tornado is coming across the field, everyone else starts leaving. And I remember turning around and everyone had gone. And this thing was coming towards us. I wasn't particularly worried because it was a fairly weak tornado anyway. So, you know, it wasn't going to cause a huge amount of damage. But I've never been that close to it. It was only sort of, 100 feet away across the field. And you could just see all this dust and stuff spinning around it. And it was just mesmerizing to watch it while we were being pelted by horizontal rain and hail coming in through the car window. So that was quite a unique experience, that one there. But with regards to the difference between hurricane and tornado, tornadoes are very small. They're only, 1 mile wide if they're pretty big. Hurricanes are much, much larger things. They are over the tropics, over the waters of the tropics. And they are basically large areas of low pressure. They're essentially big clusters of thunderstorms all rotating around a central point. So a tornado is just one thunderstorm that's generating it primarily, whereas hurricanes are many, many, many thunderstorms, all that are rotating around a central point. So they affect a much larger area. You can get tornadoes in hurricanes. They tend to be fairly brief, but of course they can cause additional damage on top of the existing strong wind field that is around hurricanes as well.
We'll give hurricanes and tornadoes a score out of 10 on the danger stakes.
Okay, good, go on.
But one of the things I was going to say to Dan was when I was at Oshkosh, which is a large aviation meetup air show last year, I had the opportunity, albeit briefly, to talk to some of the NOAA guys who fly the Hercules into the hurricanes. Yeah. And I wondered if that's something that, tickled your fancy, as it were. Would you fancy doing that?
Probably not. I think it's fascinating what they do. I'm just not sure it'd be my cup of tea necessarily.
Well, they seem to have done it quite successfully because they're still around to talk about it. But, I mean, that has to be probably one of the ultimate difficulty in obtaining life assurance jobs that you're going to have. What do you do? I fly into hurricanes. Okay, all right. Well, probably we can't cover you, but no, I mean, it's fascinating the data that they're able to pull out. But there's, I mean, obviously in the center of the hurricane, it's dead calm, but in the periphery of that, it must be sheer hell.
I can't even get my head around it. It's a frightening thing. So we're talking about weather phenomenon, if we may, Dan. I mean, what's your most, I suppose, what's the one weather event that you would most love to be able to witness?
For me, probably a sprite. Which is essentially upward lightning. Not many people have seen it.
Here we go. Yes, Captain Al has seen one, ladies and gentlemen. That's why he's become a 5-year-old child. It's so. I see. This is the thing. I had no idea that was a thing. So an upward lightning bolt. How does that even work? How does that even work?
It only happens, as far as I'm aware. Obviously, I've never seen it, but as far as I'm aware, you only get them with really big, powerful thunderstorm complexes. So you wouldn't really get them over the UK very often. I do know people that have seen them in the UK who live in Oxfordshire, and they've seen it from storms that were over the English Channel. So usually, from ground anyway, you'd need to be about 100 miles away from the actual thunderstorm itself. And you need to look very high up above the top of the thunderstorm to be able to see these things. And they look a bit like sort of a red jellyfish, if you like, but they only appear very, very briefly, for a split second type thing. So they're more often caught on a long camera exposure, really, rather than with the naked eye, unless you happen to be looking in the right place at the right time, which apparently Al has been.
Yeah, I mean, it was very difficult for me. It happened quite a reasonable time ago. So these days we have, access to the internet, and we can, instantly look at pictures of things that we've seen and identify it. And for me, it was, as Dan described it, it was a bit like a red firework coming out of the top of a thunderstorm. And, it was kind of, what the flipping heck was that? And then by the time you'd actually, had time to register what you'd seen, it was gone.
If you want to take your knowledge to the next level, sign up for a subscription at the A320 Lounge. Our online video courses combine whiteboard-style lessons with full failure demonstrations shot in 4K in state-of-the-art simulators using a professional production team. Go into your next simulator session with confidence, having seen failures run in real time and with the background knowledge to answer any questions from your instructor. To get more information and to sign up, visit a320lounge.com.
And there we go. What a fascinating chat it was. I had no idea about what a sprite was, if I'm honest with you. I had literally no idea. And we were chatting afterwards, actually. Dan is so jealous that Al has witnessed one of these, obviously, while he was flying. It's a sprite. I mean, it's.
I'm more of a Dr. Pepper man myself. But,
right. Okay. Good. Lovely. And there we are. The moment's gone. Never mind. Okay.
No,
on with the military, everyone.
We need to say a big thanks to Dan and obviously Captain Al. Yeah. For that and for putting that together.
One more part really left to come next week, and then I'm delighted to say the following week the new series of The Plain Truths will start.
Good.
So
I could do with hearing some more from Dan. Actually, I think he's done a fantastic job. So if he wants to do some more of those, that would be
lovely.
Great.
Well, I'm sure if you can find some aviation / weather related stories or things, I'm sure if I ask him very nicely, he'll join us again. So
yeah, smash him.
Yeah,
great.
It's been a lot of fun. Anybody wants to follow him on Twitter, it is at I've forgotten. It's at Dan Holley HOLLEY _ at Dan Holley _ There you are.
And actually, Matt played the A320 Lounge ad during the break there. Just FYI, Matt and Andy have released a new episode which is out this week, and it's very interesting. It's all about a chap who's designed a kind of memory app for memory checks for obviously doing kind of memory check items on the flight deck. So it's quite interesting.
Cool. Okay, right. We need to move on, guys, because we're
it's time for the military, and Armando has sent us some stories, and he's also sent in a video as well. So if everyone's ready,
indeed. Nev, I think you're first, aren't you? So here we go.
Well, the first story is from popularmechanics.com, and it says that Russia's Ministry of Defense has dropped a new video that includes some very unusual flying. In the video, a pilot is flying Russia's long-in-the-woods Sukhoi Su-57 fighter jet, known to NATO as the Felon, without the usual plexiglass cockpit canopy that protects him from the elements. The flight is likely to taking place to ensure that there are no unexpected issues flying the plane if the canopy were to suddenly come off. The video celebrates the VP Chkalov State Flight Test Centre's 100th anniversary. The centre tests new and upgraded Russian aircraft as well as new weapon systems. The centre is headquartered at Turbinsk airfield in Astrakhan.
You're really enjoying this story, aren't you, Nev?
No. With I'm going to have a word with him. I really am.
Brace yourself, Armando. Sternly worded email on its way.
With departments at Moscow and Saratov regions in Kabardino-Balkaria and Crimea. It also includes 5 proving grounds scattered across Russia and beyond. I'm very glad that was a short story.
Right, yes, indeed, as are we all. Oh, dearie me. Oh, there you go. Look, that's the only bit of the video that's actually relevant. There we go.
I just find it amazing that if this guy's going like at flat-out speed, that obviously with the canopy off, I know obviously the wind obviously goes over the front of the canopy and then over, so it's not really on the sort of cockpit as such, but still to have the roof off whilst travelling in a fighter jet is quite a nice idea.
It is. It's not the only idea that I've. I don't know. Is it not a bit drafty though? I mean,
could be a bit chilly at high flight levels, I will say.
Well, quite. This is my only nerve wracking. I mean, and also part of me is thinking there must be a reason why it hasn't been done before.
Yes.
Or is that just me being cynical? Anyway, we'll move on to story number 2, and I'm delighted to say that story number 2 is being shared with us by the legend that is Armando. So over to you, Armando.
Hey guys, the U.S. Air Force is blaming a recent F-35 Joint Strike Fighter crash on a tired pilot, too fast landing, a misaligned helmet, and a logic issue with the plane's computer system. Now, this crash took place in May at Eglin Air Force Base in Florida, resulting in the complete loss of a $175 million aircraft. So the pilot, determining that the plane was no longer responding to him at a critical time, chose to eject safely. The F-35 was landing after participating in a tactical intercept training mission. 2 other F-35As, including the mishap aircraft, flew as the Blue Air guys, basically the good guys element, intercepting 2 simulated enemy Red Air aircraft. The pilot involved in the crash was a former F-15E Strike Eagle pilot with a total of 1,459 hours behind the stick. So according to the Aircraft Accident Investigation Report published by the Air Force late last month, the crash was a result of several factors. First and foremost, the aircraft attempted to land at 202 knots calibrated airspeed, or the equivalent of about 232 miles per hour. That's much higher than the maximum 152 knots at which the aircraft should have attempted the landing. That's according to that report. The fighter was also landing at about a 5.2 degree angle, 10 degrees shallower than is recommended. As a result, the plane was approaching the runway faster and descending slower than usual. The mishap pilot, according to the report, said experienced a significant pitch oscillation and bouncing during the landing attempt and tried for 5 seconds to gain control of the aircraft. The pilot quickly decided the plane was unresponsive to his controls and ejected. The report also notes that the pilot was fatigued after the training flight and that the aircraft was still flying on speed hold. That's a form of autopilot designed to maintain a minimum speed, in this case 202 knots calibrated airspeed. The speed hold should have been turned off before the pilot attempted to land to allow that aircraft to reduce the speed to a safe landing level. And this report also says that the pilot had inadequate knowledge of the control laws, we've talked about that with the Airbus, that govern how the flight computer responds to pilot input to keep that aircraft in the air. Hardware and software issues compounded the pilot's woes. So the aircraft, according to Air Force magazine, suffered a flight control logic glitch trying to resolve the pilot's attempts to gain control of the aircraft. The sensor input of the airplane bouncing along the runway for 5 seconds. The flight computer, sensing that the aircraft was descending to a landing, commanded the nose down. The pilot, meanwhile, realizing he would have to go around the runway to make another attempt, commanded a nose up. The result, the pilot got the distinct impression at the worst possible time that his commands were being ignored and that he should get out of the plane as soon as possible. The accident report also blames the F-35's $400,000 magic helmet for the crash. The F-35 pilot's helmet includes a built-in display that projects critical information across the pilot's field of view. That helmet was misaligned on the pilot's head during the landing, leading the pilot to believe that he was being given incorrect information at a critical, confusing time. The pilot had to fly the plane, ignoring the distracting green glow of the display and what he believed was incorrect data being flashed directly in front of his eyeballs. The green glow, that's in quotes, has been cited in the past as a distraction for pilots, leading the defense contractor Lockheed Martin and the Pentagon to look for a fix. Following the pilot's ejection, the accident report says the F-35, quote, rolled, caught fire, and was completely destroyed, end quote. The report placed the value of the lost aircraft at $175 million plus, almost $176 million. So the reason it takes so long to get these reports is the Air Force and the accident investigation boards go through with a fine-tooth comb and have all these primary and contributing factors. At the end of the day, this is all so we prevent future accidents like this from happening again. And in this case, I'll bet you there's probably going to be adjustments in the F-35 training pipeline. So there you go. That's a little bit of a review from that crash that happened last year.
I mean, you know, as Armando says, it was always very sad when there are crashes like this. And of course, you've got to learn from these things, haven't you? That's what these investigations are all about.
Yeah, and I think when you've got new bits of kit, especially with these helmets and stuff, a lot of the flight helmets that pilots have nowadays have so much tech built into them. It's just like having a flight deck on your in your face.
Is it got all the like that? They've all got the HUD stuff, I presume, as well. Haven't they?
Yeah, and lots more. There's so many things now that these new helmets can do.
Indeed, yeah, I bet. Actually, we've heard from Armando while that was going out. He's just sent us some photos. Now, where did you say he was?
I don't know whereabouts he is, but he is at an airport somewhere in the US.
Right, that's very vague. Well done.
Charlotte. It'll be either Charlotte or Atlanta. It'll be one of the two, Matt.
Okay.
My guess.
All right, then.
My guess is Atlanta.
Okay, there we go. And as I say, and a lovely little picture there of a load of American Airlines. Look at that. Honestly, you guys have all the fun. But you must be missing this though, Paul. Yeah, the whole being in the airport. No.
Of course, a little bit. Jumping back to what you was just said about the helmet, every time somebody mentions a military helmet where you have a lot of stuff, I'm thinking about this 1982 movie with Clint Eastwood, Firefox. He's supposed to think in Russian, to fly that jet. It's awesome. It's just awesome.
It's just awesome, absolutely. Right, on to the next story then, please.
was in Phoenix, by the way.
Oh, Phoenix. Oh,
Phoenix.
Oh, there we go. Oh, right. There we go.
Yeah.
Lovely. Carlos, you're next, please.
Yeah, this next story, this one is on the aviationist.com, and Canada, Auntie Liz's home turf, has received the first CC-295 Kingfisher search and rescue aircraft. Ooh. Always important to have those. The Royal Canadian Air Force received the aircraft on September the 25th, the new CC-295W Kingfisher, as the Airbus C295W is locally designated. The CFB, Comox, or British Columbia, where the Royal Canadian Air Force will perform aircrew training and operational testing, and the new aircraft will replace the CC-115 Buffalo and the CC-130H Hercules. that are currently used in fixed-wing search and rescue roles. This aircraft, with tail number 501, was formally accepted by Canada in Spain in December 2019. The Royal Canadian Air Force provided in the press release a reason for the name that was adopted for the CC-295. Within the First Nations of the Northwest, the Kingfisher has long been recognised for its speed, agility, as well as its keen searching and hunting skills. Oh yeah, I see what you're doing there. Found across Canada, the Kingfisher well represents the abilities of our own search and rescue crews to accomplish their life-saving role. So upon delivery, Lieutenant General Al Meisinger, commander of the Royal Canadian Air Force, said the selfless dedication of our aviators and the search and rescue services provide to Canadians brings great credit to the Royal Canadian Air Force and the Canadian Armed Forces. The transition to the new fixed-wing search and rescue fleet is a tremendous opportunity for us, one we can take on with determination and pride. The 295 is based on the C-295 Whiskey improved variant of the C-295 that also features winglets, increasing payload, range and safety margins over the mountainous terrain, while also reducing fuel consumption. Special provisions were made for specific features requested by Canada, like the Collins Aerospace Proline Fusion avionics, reinforcements to the lower rear fuselage to improve ditching operations, and the addition of a upper escape hatch for a rapid aircraft evacuation if the aircraft is ditched in the ocean, a full enclosure for the main landing gear, and vortex generators on the rear ramp to reduce aerodynamic drag and improve the time on station and increase the top speed. The aircraft has also got provisions to allow operations from unprepared runways, which is always handy. The mission equipment includes a multi-search radar with a maximum range of 200 nautical miles, capable of tracking more than 100 contacts, an electro-optical infrared, or EOIR, turret with a multi-spectral imaging, automatic identification system, or AIS, to identify and locate ships, aircraft, land bases and navigational aids equipped with AIS transponders, 2 onboard operator stations, a large bubble windows for observation, and the integrated sensor suite will allow crews, according to the Royal Canadian Air Force, to locate persons or objects from more than 40 kilometres away, even in low light conditions. While the communication suite will increase interoperability with other search and rescue assets such as the C-149 Cormorant. Well, it's good news. At least they've got their search and rescue aircraft. Well, I dare say we could do with a few more in the UK.
Like I say, what was our one? Ours were the Sea Kings, weren't they? Weren't they the big
We
ones?
used to have the Sea Kings, yeah. They retired those a few years back now, Matt.
Yeah.
But yeah, we used to have the Sea Kings. Very popular helicopter back in the day.
Yeah,
Used by
I
all
remember
the
them very
navals.
fondly. Because obviously where we are, because we used to see them on the coastline quite a lot here, didn't we?
Yeah.
Around.
And we've actually got one. We've actually got one, Matt, which is literally probably half a mile from where you're sitting right now.
Oh, well, Flixton.
Yes.
Oh, right.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
Very cool. Yeah. That's the only. Sorry, I'm going to go on a rant now. I absolutely love that museum, and the most soul-destroying thing about that is every time we've had a guest here to go and we want to go and take, because it is an amazing museum, the bloody thing is never open.
I managed to take Brian Coleman there when he was here.
Oh, you did well.
But the day I took him there, it was about minus 6 million.
Right, okay, good. A warm day
And
then. Yeah.
yes.
There we are. It's genuinely, if you get the chance, I genuinely love that museum, which is why I'm absolutely gutted.
And it's free to get in.
Yeah, this is it. And the most frustrating thing is because I know, for example, like Owen, when he was based here in the UK, I know he'd have loved to have had a look around that museum. And every single time whenever his days fell, never ever did he actually line up with when they were bloody open so I could take him, which is really annoying. Anyway, sorry, I digress. We need to move on to the next.
So, Paul, you've got the last story, and we have an announcement from the Red Arrows about a certain new leader.
Yeah, red leader. This is not Star Wars, but the new red one. Sorry, the new red one is announced.
I see what you
Red
did there.
Arrows. Aha. The Royal Air Force aerobatic team, the Red Arrows, have announced a new Red One for 2021. Squadron leader Tom Bould, a former frontline Typhoon pilot, takes over the role from outgoing Red One Martin Pert on the 12th of October. He's 39 years old, from Bradford, West Yorkshire. He joined the RAF and has previously been a Red Arrows pilot from 2015 to 2017, where he led the synchro pair in his final season, having flown as Reds 5, 7, and 6 during his time. He says, I can remember being inspired by the Red Arrows as a child. The thrill of seeing this awesome dynamic show of speed and teamwork, it really motivated me. That is what I'm most looking forward to now, to have this special opportunity to create a memorable display that will inspire yet more people of all ages and background. This is so cool. I'm sure everybody has seen the Red. And another article that was in, sorry, because I know that you guys do that, ukaviation.news and on raf.mod.uk. There's an article very similar where he is interviewed and says that he wants to inspire with a dynamic air display. I don't know how much more dynamic it can get, but let's see in 2020. No, well, it's awesome. I mean, I want to see even more dynamism in 2021. Does this article say anything more? I do not think so. It's pretty much the same thing. Oh, wait, there you go. My first reaction was disbelief that I had been chosen as the next team leader, which very quickly turned into excitement, then trepidation for the enormity of the job. The most daunting aspect of taking over as Red One is being able to maintain and build on the reputation that the Red Arrows have forged for the last 56 years. There you go.
Wow. I mean, one of the this is the only thing that worries me a little bit, because is it a yearly thing? Do they change every year, or are they in post for sort of 2, 3, 4 years? Do we know the answer to that? Somebody in the chat room will be able to answer.
I'm sure Mr. Warner would know.
Yeah, absolutely. But because the thing is like if you're only in post for 1 year, and that happens to be the year of a pandemic where basically you can do naff all and you can't do air shows and stuff. I mean, he's not going to have a busy first year, is he? But
then again, did they not do? So they could do like a send off to the 747 or stuff like that. It's still you can still do socially distanced events that across the UK, London, England, wherever, where you could see them. Absolutely. I think maybe not air shows, but even air shows, I'm pretty sure that you can manage air shows outdoors without having everybody packed, and it can still work. I'm not sure about their plans for 2021, but why not?
We managed, didn't we, Matt?
We did. We certainly did. Both Graham and Jonathan are saying they think it's a 3-year stint that they tend to do. So both Jonathan and Graham Haley are saying. But I genuinely can't see that they're going to have a particularly busy sort of year at the moment. Just because there aren't. You think like the summer and what the calendar's like. I mean, Nev, we were chatting actually during Dan's bit there. Actually, it's one of the things that we're really missing so much is not being able to go to air shows, and there's a lot of work involved when we go to these air shows. But I mean, Nev, I mean, we just love it, don't we?
Yeah, it was great. I mean, last year, especially all the things we did at Duxford and other places, Biggin Hill as well. It was great. All the interviews that we did there, absolutely brilliant. And missing them a lot. So let's hope we can get back to at least some of them sometime next year.
Absolutely. Okay.
I'm sure we will. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, maybe like they're lacking some international visitors, but it's generally outdoors. You can manage. It's like an indoor arena where probably the government will not allow it. So I'm sure we can have them.
True.
So moving on to the next part of the show, and we've got some more listener feedback. For those who've been listening to the show each week, you'll know that we obviously ran the competition, the plane reclaimers, and we had those guys over on episode 324, where we had Andrew Keegan on as a guest, and he gave us a prize which we gave away in a competition. And part of that competition was to send us your stories about aviation in your life. And this week's entry of Aviation in Your Life has come from listener Chris Marsh.
For many children, their first experience of aviation may well have been the sight of a folded paper dart flying over their head, made and thrown by an adult in an attempt to keep them amused. In some ways, It was the same for me, except the darts flying over my head were huge and extremely noisy. Countless times through my childhood, I would hear a roar and rumble overhead, and look up to find the distinctive, broad dart shape of a Vulcan bomber skimming between the clouds in the immense and open space of Lincolnshire skies. The first Falcon bomber was delivered to the RAF in September 1956 when I was just 1 month old. Within a year, 83 Squadron were flying the aircraft out of RAF Waddington, which was soon joined by RAF Scampton and RAF Coningsby, making 3 out of the country's 10 main V-bomber bases within 20 miles of my parents' home. No wonder that these aircraft, with their exciting and distinctive sound, and always looking so graceful despite their size, provided some of my earliest memories. Of course, it was not always Vulcans flying over my young head. Other Lincolnshire airfields were the home to training and fighter aircraft too. Small jet provosts, painted day-glow orange and white, were easy to spot. More tricky were the camouflaged Hawker Hunters. Then there were the ageing Vampires with their distinctive twin-boom mounted tail, and the tiny, but then state-of-the-art, Folland Gnats. Even so, the Vulcan was the queen of Lincolnshire skies throughout the 1960s. And if the Vulcan was the queen of the skies, then the king was undoubtedly the English Electric Lightning. I feel really privileged to have been taken as a child to an open day at RAF Binbrook, an airfield positioned on a rare patch of flat ground in the middle of the rolling hills of the Lincolnshire Wolds. The climb performance of the Lightning would still be impressive even today. Back then, it was completely jaw-dropping. All these years later, I still remember the way the aircraft screamed down the runway on full reheat. The very moment the wheels left the runway, they started to retract, and the aircraft pitched upwards into such a steep climb that in moments I was craning my neck to follow what had become a small silver dot. Even that dot quickly disappeared into a clear blue sky. Those on the ground could only tell from a crackling, fading rumble from the engines that the pilot was now somewhere way up there, ready to defend us if any chill wind from the Cold War should blow Soviet bombers in our direction. Despite my interest in aviation starting so soon, it was a long time before I got the chance to get into the air myself. We were very much a working-class family, and the idea of a foreign holiday was completely out of the question. So it was my work as a photographer that eventually brought opportunities to travel. After finishing art college, I had some really lucky breaks, and as a 20-year-old, I found myself working for Colin Taylor Productions, then one of the country's leading motorsport picture agencies. Over the following years, I travelled all across the world, mainly as part of the press circus covering the World Rally Championship. However, my first overseas assignment for them was not by plane at all, but, as Matt might be interested to hear, by coach, though the trip did turn out to have aviation connections. In the summer of 1978, I was assigned to cover an excursion to Ypres in Belgium, which was organised for their readers by Rally Sport magazine. There I photographed Tony Pond in the Works Triumph TR7 win the rally. But more important for me, I met a guy called Chris Moss. Chris was the advertising manager for the magazine, and he would go on to be marketing manager for the fledgling Virgin Atlantic at the time that they doubled their fleet size overnight. They went from a single 747 to a fleet of 2. As a result of the connection with Chris, I did some photography for the airline in those early days, but that's another story. Going back to my own aviation experience, the first chance that I got to fly was in February the following year, 1979, on a trip to cover the Galway Rally in the far west of Ireland. I flew from London Heathrow to Shannon and back on an Aer Lingus 737. I know that, not just because it stands out for me as my first flight, but because I had the foresight to start keeping a log of my passenger flights, much in the same way as a pilot might do. By the way, I'd never been particularly interested in becoming a pilot myself. I've always been more than happy to concentrate on the view out of the window and the flavour of the wine, while someone else deals with all that tricky stuff up front. Checking back though, I can see that I've done about 300 flights now, through 54 different airports, on around 29 basic aircraft types, not counting all the variants. These go all the way from a Caravelle, the French contemporary of the Comet and the 707, and the even older Vickers of Viscount, to the modern-day A380 and 787. In all that time, I find it hard to remember any part of the passenger experience that I didn't enjoy. Well, that's not quite true. Maybe a couple of hours on a hard seat in a stark grey windowless economy transit lounge at LAX, waiting while our Air New Zealand 747 was refuelled wasn't so great. But that was very much the exception. Generally though, I think that I've experienced something of a golden age for economy passengers back in the 1980s and 90s, before the airlines started squeezing in all those extra seats. For me, airports are places of excitement and anticipation, and once on board, I absolutely love looking out at the world from on high, especially, as I said, when I have a glass of wine in my hand. I'm close to retirement now and don't fly for work anymore, so I'm grateful for podcasts like Plain Talking UK that continue to feed my interest in aviation between my occasional leisure trips. After 20 years living in southeast England, I'm now settled back in Lincolnshire again, and I'm still looking up at those big, wide skies. Cuts in defence spending mean that there's certainly nothing like so many RAF flights as there used to be, though we do have a privilege of being the home base for the RAF Red Arrows. More often now when I look up, it's to watch the aircraft white contrails over my house as they fly the upper air route, taking them from Europe and all points east, mainly to the United States, and Flight Radar 24 shows me exactly where they're from and where they're headed. Sometimes I even imagine that I'm up there too, glass in hand and a broad smile on my face. So that's my aviation story. Thanks again to everyone at PTUK, and I really look forward to hearing stories from the rest of you in the community.
Oh, I mean, that's just fantastic. So thank you, Chris. Great story. I mean, you guys, do you get that same anticipation of, when you're sitting in the airport? Is that when the excitement starts to build for you? Like, sitting there waiting to get on the plane. I mean, I know you lot, I don't, but everybody, you lot all love the sort of being on the airplane and sort of flying and all that kind of thing. But, I mean, I don't know, when does the excitement kick in for you?
Smelling the Jet A1 fuel as I park my car.
Right, okay. So Nev's developed some kind of weird habit. That's an interesting start. But I mean, when do you, Carlos? When does it sort of kick in for you?
Go ahead.
Matt knows as well, and if Gemma was sitting here next to me, she'd say that the excitement starts from literally the minute we load the cases in the car and leave the house.
To the airport.
I'm driving to the airport at like 6,000 miles an hour, and I get to the airport. I want to get to the desk. I want to get checked in. I'm excited. I want to get to the gate. I want to see what aircraft we're on. I want to get on board. I'm excited all the way. I am like a
You're on
possessed,
it like
I'm
a car bonnet.
banshee the minute I leave here.
Now, Paul, presumably is slightly different for you, maybe, because obviously you do so much business travelling. I mean, do you still get that
same,
excitement?
Actually, yeah, for me. And I always have this thing. I always take the morning flight, the super early. If I can leave the first flights out. I've done it actually very many times to go to Switzerland, for instance, the 6 a.m. one, because they're never late, right? Because the aircraft is basically sitting on the ground, unless there's fog. They're never going to be late. And when I fly internationally, I often fly, for instance, with Emirates. I would take the first one or the second one in the morning. So for me, really, the excitement is when I have to wake up like I usually at 3 a.m., 4 a.m. to get into the car because, I need to check in by, let's say, 5 to get a flight at 6 or something. So for me, the excitement is the day. For me, it's a day of flying. I usually think of it as a day of flying. So I'm excited all the way throughout. For that, I'm very close to Carlos. I really do enjoy. I know that sometimes, the airport will be bothersome. But delays and lines and whatever. I mean, of course, not these days, but I love it no matter what. It's part of the experience. It's not just only the flight. It's the entire thing. I can be, actually friends of mine, I don't think I've ever revealed that on this podcast. I might have on mine, but on this podcast, I do not recommend people to be with me while I'm in the airport because I am very impatient, and because I've done it so much, and also because it's part of my job, I see all the stuff that doesn't work. By the way, a terminal like T2 at Heathrow works very well, so I rarely have anything to say, so I'll be in a good mood. But some terminals around the world, especially Frankfurt, for those who know me, will drive me crazy, and I will be really off a bad mood. And it's the only time I'm never in a bad mood. I can be in a bad mood in an airport, which is a bit paradoxical, but yeah, there you go.
Are you one of these people, Paul, that goes through the airport? When they have those little stands next to the various services in the airport with saying, was your experience good? Green, yes. Red, no. And you're the one who always hits the red button. No, because I'm generally kind to the staff, and also because usually it's not their fault. It's not their fault that the airport was badly designed and or that the processes are badly designed. The people do their best. I truly think that most. I know, and Stansted.
Now, come on.
But honestly, in general, I think people do their best with the tools they're being given or the training they've been given. And I'm not here trying to excuse everybody, but at the end of the day, usually the people, and it must suck. I don't know if when I was younger, I did retail, like jobs like on the front line, and it sucks because you suddenly get all the wrath of the earth because you're the guy standing in front of the whole process of the company behind you, which you had nothing to do with, and somebody's shouting at you. I will never shout over an employee ever. I don't think it's fair.
I get that a lot, actually, weirdly, with one of the jobs that I'm doing at the moment, because I'm working for a company called Naked Wines and I work in their delivery team, and you'd be horrified the amount of emails you get that basically go along the lines of that, you'll literally get emails that, your late delivery has ruined my holiday, and things like that. And you just think, come on.
Exactly, right? Honestly, if the line at security takes 10 minutes more than usual, it will not change anything.
No, exactly.
And I think what you started with about, you're flying so many times and of course have status and whatever, so I get the nice side of it. I mean, I don't understand how people that fly so much can be actually angry. They get the actual best side of everything, the lounge, the best seats, whatever, and they're going to be angry about a 5-minute. I'm like, come on, guys. I mean, really, you have everything lined up, you're living a dream, and then you're going to complain. I mean, just smile and, just whatever.
Actually, Nev, put aside what the situation we're all in now in across the globe. What are the things that most frustrate you when you're going through the airport? Forget the COVID thing. So
yeah, a difficult one to call that, actually, because normally, of course, it would be crowding. Lots of people queuing for things, but the way it is at the airport at the moment, there's plenty of room around. I think the one thing I would say, when I've checked a bag in, which I try not to do, but when I do, and I'm waiting for it to come off the carousel, why do people have to stand so close to it? So you can't see your bag, and they stand right in front of you with their back facing you, and that annoys me beyond measure, I have to say.
Indeed.
It's like those people. standing in the aircraft as soon as we're basically taxiing, and you're like, you're not going to get out faster of the aircraft. Come on, and
a bit of a pet peeve.
I mean, I get it, but
I mean, at the moment, BA are boarding from the back of the aircraft,
back to front,
and then when they get off the aircraft, you're not allowed to stand up at all until you're
there.
Called. And I have to say that's working really well, and I'm wondering whether they might continue that for post-COVID
because it's so efficient.
Because it works a heck of a lot better.
Really.
Now, Paul, we've got about little over 10 minutes before we have to wrap up the show. But Paul, we thought we'd ask you for your kind of overview on what you think is maybe going to happen or is happening within the industry now, obviously from a layovers perspective.
Well, I work with a flurry of people in travel, so whether it's airlines, airports, bodies, and also actually I should mention, because I don't think I've mentioned enough, like investors, so people that make investment decisions in investment funds, etc., whether or not to invest in travel related businesses, including airlines, of course. So they all, especially now, they all want to know what's going to happen, etc. So I don't have a crystal ball. The one thing I would say, and it's always fun to talk with AvGeeks for that, the one thing we need to pay attention of is, first, we have our own cognitive or narrative bias. Like, I travel, so let's say I don't right now, but let's pretend I travel. So yeah, I travel and I can do it, and it's not a big problem. So it's not a problem. And but a few guys do not make an industry. It's not because Nev is traveling, and I love Nev, and I love that he's traveling. And as I said at the top of the show, I live vicariously through his own travels because I don't do it. That's not enough to actually make an industry, right? And there's a lot of this actually when you read comments or even sometimes articles in the newspapers that somebody would say, due to my experience traveling, it's okay and it's back to normal. But still a lot of people are not traveling. Business are not sending their guys. And the other thing that is also linked to that is very important is like there's a difference about what should happen, what we want to happen, and what is happening. And when I do the kind of work I do, I really look at what is happening. I'm not, and by the way, here as well, I'm not making a judgment whether it's good or bad. It's just stuff that is happening. But I'll start with one comment. I'm disappointed. I'm extremely disappointed compared to a few months ago, because I really thought that, especially in Europe, compared to countries in East Asia that have dealt with this pretty well, as in people living within their bounds of their own countries, whether it's in Taiwan, whether it's in Thailand, whether it's in South Korea, whether it's in even New Zealand, etc., can live a pretty normal life. They cannot travel, fair enough, but they can live a pretty normal life. In Europe, we didn't choose either. We didn't close the borders, really, and we didn't actually squash the virus either. So we are in this kind of weird situation. And when I say I'm disappointed, is because for travel, especially for us to save travel, if we had done more, if we had a plan, and say we, of course, as governments and other bodies, if we had a plan, we had a full summer of respite, we knew a respite was coming, to have some type of plan, whether it's testing at airports, whether it's, basically processes or simply harmonizing various parts of the processes within Europe, at least. And it didn't happen. You have different processes depending on the airport and the countries. You mentioned that already in the show. So that's my disappointment. Now, as how it will happen, I think the biggest mistake was, and I had a lot of pushback at the start when I said that, the biggest mistake was, I think, from governments, but also from airlines, to think that this will last 4 to 6 months, whether it's clearly a 2 to 5 years timeline, depending on, of course, virus, luck, etc., whether or not we'll go out early, and which feels that we're a bit surprised, and that some of the bailouts that have been given around the world will not be enough. There will be more, sadly, people getting fired because, again, we had, and that's part of the narrative, we had an exceptional summer, basically. When I say exceptional, it's not exceptional compared to previous years. That we were the only continent in the world that was able to truly travel with airplanes. It was Europe. Nobody else was able to. So we had this kind of feeling that, oh yeah, look, it's back to kind of normalization. It will go up. It's getting better. So it can only get better. And of course it didn't. And now everybody is suffering. So sadly, I don't think that, looking at the people I'm talking to, the airlines I'm talking to, that you won't have any betterment before March or April for the short term, as in it will be in that kind of middle ground when people are freaking out, governments are freaking out. As I said earlier, governments right now are all prioritizing their own residents. Not that they don't want people to travel or they don't want people to come. We've seen that in the summer, of course, with Italy or Greece or Portugal, etc. They want it because they rely on tourism. But of course, as everybody's figuring out whether or not there's a wave or not, and this is not the point here. The point is that the behavior of government will be like, let's try to protect our own and not add more from abroad. Whether it's good or not, again, I'm not making a judgment. I'm saying this is probably what will happen, and that will happen for a few more months. There's no business travel at least until, spring next year. And then that creates this kind of issue is that airlines will have to downsize. Actually, I think sadly, and I know I will anger people by saying that, but I think BA had no choice but to downsize, because at some point you can artificially maintain jobs through government programs. But the reality is some people are saying, and I tend to agree with them, that traveling the way we did in 2019, which is pretty freely, at least for people like us living in the US or in Europe, won't happen before 2025 probably. So it's 5 years. So you cannot sadly pay for people to stay in jobs that don't exist that long. And I'm sorry, I'm not saying that with a good. I'm not happy about this. So I think it will sadly take a long, slow recovery, unless, and that's the thing, that's the hope, the vaccine. I know people don't really like the vaccine. Myself, actually, when you hear that the vaccine is being fast-tracked and we're doing fast-tracking, I'm not fully comfortable with it. I'm probably not the first person to need a vaccine because I'm not particularly at risk. But at the same time, as I said also earlier, I'm flying very often to Asia, and I know from having talked to whether it's government bodies or other authorities in that continent, they will require the visa. That will be basically your passport. You will have to have a visa to enter. So I will get the vaccine, because that will be my only way to being able to enter in places where I usually work without to travel, but also to enter, because that's the thing. It's not the fault of the airlines. It's the countries that will say, no, our country is closed. As I said earlier, Australia basically said they won't open before a vaccine, and they said right now the deadline is December 2021, which is insane. We never thought it would be 1.5 years closed. Yeah. Imagine the poor Australians. They're closed. New Zealand, that has basically tried and almost succeeded to crush the virus, same. Countries like Thailand, same. So Thailand was supposed to open, it's a good example, they were supposed to open for tourism. So they not the traditional tourism. They said, we're going to say that if you want to come to Thailand for, let's say, 2-3 months, so long-term tourism, you can enter. That was supposed to start this week or maybe early next week, I forget. And all the plans were put in place, all the procedures were put in place, but there were many surveys done around the country in Thailand asking the locals whether or not they agree with it. And the vast majority of people say, no, we don't want anyone coming in. The government just scrapped this. The country is staying shut. And that's what comes back to my point, is that sadly for us that love travel, governments will have these kind of behaviors for a little longer. Not forever, by the way, but for a little longer. Try to defend their borders because they're like, we'd rather not import any more cases. And that will not come into our own betterment, because we like to travel. The last thing I will say, because I don't want to be too boring here, is that obviously where it will start, and we saw that with Europe, is neighboring countries that are used to work together, which is why probably at some point you'll have like a travel bubble between Australia and New Zealand, which is why we had a travel bubble in Europe, and that will continue no matter the current quarantines. We will have a standardization, because at least that we know to work with each other. At some point, I also believe, for instance, New York to London might have some trouble, because again, these are cities that work so close together usually that probably will find ways. So this will start this way. It will not be suddenly the entire planet opening. It will be first people that in countries that are used to travel together between each other, that used to work together. So that will be an increasing, but I think sadly, and I don't want to be it's not about doomsaying. I think that listening to all these government bodies, and again, I'm not saying they're right or wrong. This is not the point. What they're going to do is important. They're not going to open fast. They're still going to maintain quarantine. There's sadly not enough currently testing capability to being able to do testing at scale at borders. Even Germany, which has a very big industrious platform with all their companies is actually retreating at offering testing at airports because there's not enough testing for the locals. So they're going to first say the locals can get, and then the travels will get. So I think we will get there. We could have gone, and that's going to be my last comment, we should have gone faster, because if we had the mindset of, okay, this is going to be a long battle, and by the way, if you listen to basically all the politicians at the start, they were saying, this is a war, they're using these very strong terms. Okay, so if this is a war, you should place your money there, you should place your investments there. We did it. We don't really have a plan. It's not only the UK. We know we live here. We know what messes have happened. Pretty much all countries, when I talk to friends in Europe and abroad, have had their own issues because we didn't plan, and now we're kind of late, and we have to kind of deal with how we're going to cope, and which will delay but the outcome. But again, I'm hopeful. But to be frank, I don't think that the airline industry will recover the way we knew it before at least 2023-4, sadly. Sorry, I didn't want to be a downer, by the way, when I say all this.
No, but I mean, it's realistic, isn't it?
The one thing I will say, however, is that the airlines that will be very good that will probably be the best coming out of this will be the low-cost airlines, because they don't rely as much on business travelers.
Yeah.
They usually stay within their own continent, whether it's Southwest in the US or stays in domestic US, or whether it's Ryanair, Wizz Air, and EasyJet, because these are the three best and most pan-European airlines, low-cost airlines. They are doing pretty well in terms of, they are the ones pushing that average that we're telling you about how much they have on their balance sheets. So, and in a way, of course, I like BA, I like all the traditional airlines, but I'm a business owner as well, and I must admire the fact that someone like Wizz Air is able to tell us, yeah, we have 24 months of survival because we did a good business model, and then you have other airlines like Lufthansa, KLM, Air France, Iberia that need like billions and billions from the government to even survive 6 months. You're like, in a pure business sense, who's right here? Probably Wizz Air, Ryanair, and EasyJet.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, not having to rely on said bailouts to sort of essentially keep themselves afloat. I mean, there's a lot there to digest, Paul. Thank you for
thanks.
Sorry, that was a bit.
No, not at all.
Good.
No, really
That's good,
interesting
Paul.
stuff. Absolutely. So the time has come to wrap up, Carlos.
Yes, it has. Matt's going to quickly flick a picture up on the screen, which is from listener Jan Hubner. For those of you, he's been watching us on his big screen at home. So thanks for that, Jan. That's very nice.
I wonder if we're in 4K. Yeah.
We
are in 1080p now, so that there is progress there. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, nice.
Thanks for that, Jan. That's very nice.
Good cable management too. I think.
Yes, absolutely. I knew you'd spot that, Nev. I knew you'd spot that.
So don't forget, you can find us on all the usual social media platforms: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Search for Plain Talking UK. Don't forget that WhatsApp number +44 757 22 491 66 if you want to get your picture on the green screen behind Matt in the PTUK studio, or even behind me on my green screen.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can also email the show podcast@plaintalkinguk.com, and don't forget to check out our website allthews.plaintalkinguk.com, where you can find the links to our store, where you can buy a PTUK t-shirt, or you can buy a PTUK mug, or you can become a very awesome patron of the show to help us push things through the show and donate to the show through PayPal as well on there. And also, if you shop on Amazon, as I have done twice this week, Matt, thanks very much.
Always a pleasure.
You can use our Amazon link to purchase your purchases through Amazon, and we get a small referral fee, which is awesome as well. So, Paul, before we shut things down, don't forget to give your awesome show a plug. So, go ahead, Paul.
Well, I haven't released any episodes since April, but I've just committed to Carlos that I will by the end of this month. So it will come, Layovers.2. But you know what? I'm going to reveal that, although I should have revealed that on my own show. I've not released a single episode since April, as I said. Yet, since April, we've reached number one on Aviation top, the top Apple shows Aviation in exactly 18 countries.
Wow.
By not releasing anything. So I'm thinking, should I maybe never release again? And we were number one in Hong Kong, in Japan, in Greece, in Switzerland, in Qatar, in Dubai. And I'm like, okay, so I'm not going to release anything. People really don't want to listen to me, actually. So layovers.2 @lay_overs. And you'll always find my name, which is impossible to pronounce and thus impossible to write down. So just go there and you'll find me as well. Thank you guys for having had me tonight.
Always a pleasure, Paul. And make sure when you do the next one that we'd like a slice of that pie as well. So do feel free to give us a mention.
So we are going to say a big thanks to all the YouTube viewers tonight. Thank you to everyone who's tuned in tonight to watch us, and also a big thanks to everyone who listens to the show as an audio download. Don't forget to give us a little mention on the old ratings if you download us on iTunes. We would love that awesomely. So we're going to say a big thanks lastly then to Paul. Thanks, Paul, for joining us tonight. You've been absolutely legendary as always. Nev, it's been great to have you back on the show. So thanks, Nev, to you. Thanks to Matt, and not forgetting Armando, and a big thanks as well to John for all the pre-show work that he's done this week for us. So big thanks to you, John. So from me, Carlos, here in my PTUK studio, from Matt in the master PTUK studio.
Hello, goodbye.
From Paul in his glorious studio, and from Nev in the NevTech studios.
Hi.
See you next week. Take care. Have a great weekend.
Bye, everyone. See you later.
Bye, everyone. Bye. Thank you. Bye.